Hey everybody, so this is Irene CBiz Media Faith, Love, and Trends, and I want to talk about the Charlie Sheen documentary along with some other things and some other connections I saw between him and other latest news and celebrities and whatnot. But as far as the documentary goes, I really saw him as the prodigal son, and I saw his dad, Martin Sheen, as the hero. Um, if you guys know Bible, the prodigal son, basically his dad had everything and he wanted his inheritance early. So once he got that inheritance, he went out and just did everything possible until he had nothing left. Um, and he was sharing the slop with the pigs. He was that low, in that low of a place. So he had to come back home to his dad, and his dad received him with open arms. And it seems like when I look at this documentary, I'm familiar with Charlie Sheen. I grew up watching him. I didn't realize how much his dad, really had his back. And growing up as a young person, I guess I didn't see all the stories and all the things going on, but his dad over and over again had his back and vouched for him. And even his brother, I think, was in the documentary. I think he was representing the other family members because his brother Emilio is also in the public eye, as well as his dad. And neither one of them wanted to be in the documentary. And I'm glad that they took that stance because I think that they just always want to be a supporter to him, to Charlie. Early on in life, you knew he was different. He had a child at a younger age. Again, his dad was there to be supportive of him. His dad was already in the acting world and created a name for himself. So Charlie just got into a lot of different things. His ego kind of got overblown as he became celebrity and was able to kind of get and do whatever he wanted, and that included women and drugs. He had a couple of marriages that produced children. And with one marriage, the young lady was also an addict like him. Um, so I believe the children suffered in that situation. I remember when he did marry Denise Richards. I remember when they were the it couple, and I thought that they were going to stick it out. It would have been great, but it sounds like his addiction got in the way. And with one addiction, seems like there always comes another. So his drug addiction was so big, but connected to that was a sex addiction. And they talked about him in the situation with Heidi Fleiss, who was a madam, and all of this money he paid out to get women. That was a big scandal back then. So he paid for his women. Not to say that he couldn't just randomly get some, but because of his celebrity, of course, women thought he was attractive. I'm sure he had a lot of female fans. But he needed some on demand women where he didn't have to do the work and he could just get a woman at any time, just like he could get whatever he wanted at any time. Just like the prodigal son had all the access he could get until it ran out. Didn't realize the whole big thing with the 2.5 Men. I don't know why I was kind of out of the loop on that. I do remember when he was no longer on the show. I remember the Tiger Blood thing where he was just going ham on I believe socials, where I wasn't even on there that deep watching him with that, but he was on some major news outlets and they were just letting him rant and go wild. He was on not only street drugs, cocaine, which even led to crack, which He didn't even want to talk that much about his crack issues, but he would just refer to it as cocaine that was cooked, but it was crack. If you're doing crack, you're doing crack. It is what it is. Cocaine, crack. Cocaine was considered the upper echelon drug, still in the same family, and it still led to the same struggles. So one drug is not superior to the other, so to speak. I know people don't want to look a certain way, especially in their celebrity and their all of this. That, hey, crack is beneath me, but it wasn't beneath him, and it's not beneath many people that have had addictions in the past. No matter where you come from, no matter the family name, status, money, whatever, you can end up on crack, especially if you have any type of drug addictions. When he was married to Denise, he was kind of skirting the line, still doing some things he shouldn't have been doing. And Denise said some of the things that happened to her. She won't even tell us on the documentary. She's just saying he put her through so much and it was excruciating. Um, but she still was there for him even as he continued his drug habits, even when he remarried another woman who had drug issues. Then he continued, then that ended, and then he continued his drug habits and prostitution and all of that. Denise was still his ex-wife, but still tried to help him during all of that. So it's crazy that this guy has these ex-wives that still are willing to talk about him on his documentary and be real and candid, but still have love for him at the same time. They are the mothers of his children as well. He was friends with Sean Penn, who spoke for him. Who else was on there? Chris Tucker. And Chris talked about how he was able to get a leading role with him, and part of it was because Charlie spoke up for him and said, yeah, put him on the bill as well, top billing of this film. He actually said he would take second and let Chris take first lead. And then part of me was like, it wasn't said, but I was like, maybe he was being a bit selfish here because he knew he was in for the debauchery and the drugs, and he was kind of caught up in that world, and he really wasn't interested in even acting, but he knew he had to make money, so he's like, let me let this other guy get top billing. He's African American. I'm not gonna put race into it in that way, but yeah, let the other guy do the work, and I'll just ride, shotgun on this one so I can do more stuff and have more fun and play that Hollywood game. Maybe that wasn't his intention, but part of me in the back of my mind is like, he wanted to really focus on having fun and not actually be the leading man. Maybe that was part of the reason. He did have a best friend who's African American as well. Looking at his, it's a lot to say about this. Looking at his roots of Estevez, I assume that that's Latino roots. They didn't really talk about their family heritage very much that I can recall, but his family has Latino roots, and I remember when I found out his dad, Martin Sheen, his name wasn't really Sheen. And I found out about Emilio and that they were related. So it's like, oh, okay. Didn't put it all together as far as the last name being Estevez, but in Hollywood, people have changed their name to something catchier, meaning at times. Doesn't mean that he was trying to hide his cultural background or anything like that, but he can very much blend into the world of, I'll say, white America very easily. Um, and if anyone knows what his background is when it comes to Estevez, please let me know. Maybe I'll drop something in the description. Um, and I think he was saying the name just more easily rolls off the tongue. He followed after his dad's name. He wasn't one of those kids that was against nepotism. He's like, hey, if I can write off my dad's name, I might as well. He didn't do very well in school, and he decided to take this path of acting. So, but he had a charisma and a swag and something special about him, even though he was not the regular, ordinary, talented person. He may have lacked in some ways, in other ways he made up for it. Anyway, he ends up, telling us near the end of this that he's done so many things and tried so many things, even sexual things, that there are times that he turned to the other side of the menu without getting, too descriptive. That's what he said. So after doing some of everything, and just like with drugs, after trying so many drugs and so many different highs, that it doesn't feel the same anymore. Your body gets desensitized. So now let me try something else. And so that's what he did. He tried the other side of the menu, and he also let us know that he had HIV. And I think we had found that out a little bit ago, but that information about the trying other things that he wouldn't normally try, and to now connecting it with the HIV is a possibility there. Um, he said, I think his ex was saying something is going on with you beyond your regular detox issues, which he's had before. So that's when he found out the HIV. First, he said he thought it was going to be a complete death sentence. That they said his heart was going to give out or something, but the fact that he had HIV, he actually felt, hey, this is possible to work with because of all of the new advances when it comes to that. So in a way, he was relieved to find out that information. All right, so that's kind of the story of Charlie Sheen. He's been sober for some time now, for some years. I can't exactly recall the number of years, but he's more involved in his kids' lives now, and things are better. Denise Richards is still says she still loves this man, and she was brought to tears more than once during this documentary. And I know she recently had some issues with her own divorce. Not sure all the things going on with that, but there was speculation that she's has some type of addiction issues as well. Not really sure if that's 100% true or how that panned out. That wasn't a part of the documentary. But leading the big thing that stands out for me is when he said turning to the other side of the menu. And we know about different addictions, and I believe sex was one of his addictions as well. Is that, again, you keep chasing that high, and once it's so your body gets adjusted to that new high, you got to find something even higher. And it makes me think of the scripture in Romans where it talks about the man leaves the natural use of the woman. And we know that has to do with different sexualities and different sexual choices, but that touched my mind as well when it came to his situation, and many other Hollywood men, and even at times just men in general, that have too much access to certain things, and especially too much access to women and bedroom things. um I'll say in the bedroom, because then it makes me think of the guy, and I'm going to put his name in the description. I don't have his name in front of me, but we know that Diddy has recently been charged, as I'm recording, for 50 months, about 4 years in prison. And one of those things had to do with sex trafficking, sex related crimes is what he's been charged on. The racketeering and other things, they did not have sufficient evidence. I don't know if he was charged for any type of domestic violence or assault, but that was the big thing that stood out for me when it came to Didi and Cassie and that original situation where she got a good payout. Um, and she's the one that kind of brought this with the feds. And now maybe the feds had sought her out, but whatever the case, she came with all the receipts that she had. But it didn't convict him to the level I believe that of course, they wanted, and even maybe she wanted. But 4 years is not small potatoes. And I think I heard something about him possibly getting time served, which he's been in there for a bit, in prison for a bit already. Um, so that might already cut down his sentence. Not 100% on that. Don't have all the facts on that. But if I do come across something, I will drop some things in the description to clear things up for you guys, at least in real time as I'm recording this. But it just made me think of the whole Diddy situation and just too much access. Um, but not just Diddy, the guy he so-called hired to be with Cassie. And it was supposedly revealed during the trial that she was the one hiring this guy and she was the one doing all these things. And now when I think about it, it's like maybe she was like, okay, I'm in this situation. Let me take the control. If I let him take the control, who knows? It might be so many different random guys. It might be this and that. He might do some of everything, but let me act like, okay, I'll do this. I'll take the control. I'm into this. This is my body. Even though, let's say she may not have been 100% all in, but since she's in this situation, let me take control of it so at least it won't be as rough on me, Just because she took the initiative, maybe it was for her own protection. Even she was going to stay in this bad situation, she better make it a bit better, right? This is just a theory I have. So she keeps calling this same guy. And I get it. Like, at least if you're with the same guy and it's not a bunch of random guys, it's a little bit safer. You're used to this person. You get some level of comfortability with them, and it's not like as scary every time because you have a familiarity with this person. So she keeps hiring this same guy that comes multiple times to do these acts with her and Diddy. This guy, did somebody say he was a dancer? I think he said he was a dancer. So he was already coming from a life where sex was his job, sex related things. And this was something that was not new to him. Um, in doing these acts with Cassie and Diddy. And Diddy, for the most part, all I know that he was He was a watcher. I'll say that. Don't know. Again, it could be some deeper things there, but I didn't get into detail in the trial. I kind of saw some surface things, but I didn't get all of those details. Anyway, this guy talks about how he was sleeping with women so much, or doing his job so much, so to speak, as well. Who knows? He may have had an addiction himself. He has a book and everything. But it was to the point where he was no longer able to function using his manly parts, doing his manly duties, so to speak, because he was doing it so much. And especially if it becomes a job for you, where's the incentive and all of that? Where's the pleasure and all of that? If this is something that I have to do on demand, it no longer becomes what God created it to be in the first place. And I think he was trying to be supportive to men that no longer had their abilities in the bedroom for various reasons. And he was saying, for him, it was probably because he had to do it on demand so many times, and he had too much. He had too much of it, basically. If something becomes too easy to get, and it becomes like eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day, the peanut butter and jelly starts to get boring, and you're not going to want it anymore. You're not going to react the same, etc., etc. So another case of just too much access, too much. And he kind of tells his story in that, and makes me connect to Charlie's situation. Too much access, too many women to the point where you get bored of the women. Too much of a certain type of drug, too much cocaine. You get so bored with cocaine, you have to cook it and make it crack. So you can get too much of a thing, and chasing that high can become detrimental, and it can affect you until, for some people like this gentleman that Diddy continued to hire, no longer could use his parts successfully. Um, and men like Diddy, the fact that he hired this guy, the fact that he participated in all these freak offs, he had to up the ante. He had to up the high. It's like you couldn't just have another freak off again. You had to do something else. You had to do something to excite you again, because otherwise it's just the same old thing. And that's the detriment of too much access. That's the detriment of excess in this world. And some of the reasons I believe that the Bible and God has set certain rules and standards for us is because of the excess we can get into, the consequences that we can face, not only legally and otherwise, physically, mentally. What does this world have to offer? What else can I chase? What can I do beyond my imagination that's going to please me, to the point you no longer have anything that will give you that feeling? You've gone beyond. And then what kind of life is that, to live the rest of your life where there's nothing else, that no limit you can reach beyond that? Nothing else, nothing can satisfy you for the rest of your life. You're just, what are you going to do? Keep chasing this high that you might never be able to find because you've done everything. So I'm like, Diddy probably in a similar situation as Charlie, hiring this guy who is also in the situation, which he may be in the situation too, just because he needs money and this is his job, of just too much access and too much excess, to the point where now you're getting charged by the feds. I don't know. Now you're committing DV against this woman because nothing can satisfy you. You have to control her. You have to do this. You have to do that in order to get your high. And that's really the reason why you're so upset and you're using this DV, is because nothing can satisfy you anymore. So you're taking it out on this woman. That's just a speculative part right there. But yeah, so this is me just saying, how all these stories collide is just too much excess. And it's really against nature. That's why in life we have obstacles. That's why in life we have to go through these different channels. It shouldn't be so easy to get all these things, but in the world of celebrity, that's what you can do. And another thing that it made me think about as well is how we can't just listen to what our bodies tell us. When our bodies tell us, that's good, I like more, or I see that sometimes men can get excited off of different things. And you have to regulate that. I feel like sometimes men can be more sensitive when it comes to their urges, their excitement, so to speak. They can be more sensitive. And sometimes their body will react to things that maybe it wouldn't normally react to. Different type of people, different age groups. And you got to regulate that behavior. You got to regulate that. I'm not saying all men, but I think men are somewhat sensitive when it comes to their manhood. And, they can at times, I believe, react pretty easily in different scenarios. And sometimes they'll listen, like they said, listen to that other head when that other head is just too sensitive and reacts to everything. So you have to put it in context. That's why a man needs to have a set of standards, values that he lives by, because if he allows his body and his senses to tell him that I'm looking at this and this is making me feel a certain way, so I'm going to go get that. And we know that that person is underage. We know that that person may be different in a variety of ways. It may not be the best idea for you to get with this situation, but your manhood is reacting, so you're going to follow that manhood. You have to be more powerful in your mind and in your head to say, no, I'm not going to do that. The same with the drugs and all the other things as well. You have to have a set of standards where you're not going to just do what feels good, especially for men. For women, I think for some reason, God put something in us where we are able to think things out. Maybe we're a little bit sensitive in other ways. And we don't just do any and everything. But men kind of just do what feels good and feels right at the time without at times thinking about the consequences. Not giving them a pass, because some people say you're giving them a pass to just be messy. And some women do. They're like, well, they couldn't help it. And no, I'm not going to give them a pass in that way just because they're a man who reacts. They have the ability to say no. They have the ability to figure out something else to do in another way or something. God has given them that ability. But if we don't teach men that, fathers don't teach their young men that, if we allow them to just go ahead and do everything and be everything and have everything, then this is how they're going to end up, with too much. And they're going to be taking advantage and pillaging things and abusing things and people, and just to get what they want. And when it comes to the level of, okay, now other people are getting involved, you're messing with another spirit, another soul, another being. And that's very dangerous and can be very evil, just to please your own satisfactions. So a lot of deep things we shared and we talked about in this chat, but the whole point is too much excess is a detriment and a danger to not only that person, but to all of those around them. And even in some cases, it can be an entire community affected by one person's desire and excess to get what they want. Deep things, prayers up. This is definitely a scenario where prayer needs to be involved. And I'll drop a link from my podcast, Prayers Up Club, because we need prayer in these situations and matters. And we need good guidance and leadership as we move forward. Because you can pray, but if you don't do anything, if you don't educate, if you don't help, if you don't bring about awareness, if you are a part of the problem and you get involved in this excess because you want to impress someone because everybody else is doing it, then you're part of the problem too. So we have to recognize the issues that we have as a community, society, and as individuals. So what are your thoughts, comments, questions on this subject? Email me at cbiztv@yahoo.com or drop your thoughts in the comments, and we will talk again. All the best. God bless.